So, is Disney going to duck it up? Find out on... Hi, I'm John Latshaw, and welcome to Full Tilt Nerdity. Coming to you right now from the Worldwide Broadcast Operations Center at stately Latshaw Manor, which is where I normally do the nightly draw, weeknights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and 2 a.m. Universal Coordinated Time if you need to figure it out for your time zone. But anyway, doing Full Tilt Nerdity from here, and what I wanted to talk about was a show that's coming up. Yeah, I'm going to give somebody some free publicity, but, you know, what the heck, it's nerdy. I want to talk about it. And that show is DuckTales. Now, I am interested and excited about DuckTales coming up, but not for the reason that a lot of the YouTubers who are talking about it are going to be interested in it. Those guys, they're all young kids, and they were in elementary and middle school when DuckTales came out, so they would come home from school and watch it after school. Me, when the show came on in 1987, I was in college and I was working in broadcasting, so I didn't watch the show. I really didn't. No, my interest in it is not a nostalgia for the TV show. It's nostalgia for the comic books that it was based on. Let me explain. When I was a youngin', when we would go off on a trip, we would all load up into the family truckster and we would head off to parts unknown. When we would stop for gas, which was frequent because, I mean, the thing drank fuel like a 747 heading from Hartsville to Tokyo Narita. I mean, it drank gasoline like you wouldn't believe. It was a 72 model. It was made before the Arab oil embargo. You remember in Love Shack, the B-52 singing about, I got me a Chrysler, it's as big as a whale? That was it. That was the car. Anyway, whenever we would stop somewhere for gas, which, like I said, was about every 15 minutes, Dad would give me and my sister a couple of bucks and say, here, go get you a Coke and get you some comic books. Unless we stopped at Stuckey's. I hate Stuckey's. Stuckey's didn't have comic books. They didn't have real candy. They had pecan logs and peanut brittle. I hated Stuckey's. Jeez, I hated Stuckey's. I'm 50 years old and I still hate Stuckey's. I'm glad they went out of business. Good riddance. Where was I? Oh, yes, comic books. So I'd take my $3 and I would go to the spinner rack and see what they had. Now, if I was lucky, there would be some Archie comics in there. There would be some maybe Looney Tunes. There maybe, if I was really lucky, it would be one of the Golden Key Star Trek comic books there. And I would always look for an Uncle Scrooge comic. Now, turns out that in that time period, that was the early 70s. That was the end of the era when Carl Barks was doing the Uncle Scrooge comics. And Uncle Scrooge wouldn't exist without Carl Barks. He was known as the good artist or the good duck artist. The fans, this was before they were allowed, the artists were allowed to sign their work, would be able to say, okay, that's done by the good artist. That's the good guy. That's because his stories were very intricate and very in-depth and were great. The story about the Flying Dutchman is a classic. And he expanded upon what should have been just a simple little comic about Donald Duck and his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, into a whole world of Duckburgians, if that's the metronym. Anyway, there was a massive supporting ensemble cast, good guys and bad guys. Good guys like Gyro Gearloose and Gladstone Gander and just like I said, just a huge number of folks over there. And then on the bad guys, the villains were great villains. The Beagle Boys, Magica Dispel. And there was a whole mythology about Scrooge and how he had made his money in the Klondike by, as he says, being smarter than the smarties and tougher than the toughies. And it would have been a great source material for a television series. And that's kind of where DuckTales came from. But not really, because it had to be sanitized a little bit for television, and they couldn't use Donald Duck because lawyers, even though it was Disney. Donald's television rights were tied up on something else, as I recall. But the thing is that it was kind of based on those original stories. Now, not to say that the DuckTales story shows were great. I don't think they hold up that well. The animation was, fair to middling. The voice talent was very good. Alan Young, who was best known as Wilbur from Mr. Ed, was Scrooge McDuck. And a lot of the folks who are famous for doing voiceover work, like Rob Paulson, Maurice LaMarche, those kinds of folks, they worked on DuckTales just like everybody else in the Hollywood voice acting community did. But I never watched it because, like I said, I never was around. I was busy. I was working. So when Disney announced they were going to reboot DuckTales, and they put out a teaser trailer with the cast singing the DuckTales theme, I was really excited when I saw that, they actually have an actual Scotsman who has some experience with doing TV shows about adventure to play Scrooge McDuck. I mean, David Tennant, what a perfect casting. And by casting separate cast members to play Huey, Dewey, and Louie, points out they're going to give each one of the boys a separate personality, which is great because in the originals and in the Carl Barks stories, well, they just kind of tended to finish each other's sentences. All of that's well and good, but when they released the title sequence, there was just something off about it, just something not right. And I had to watch it over and over again to try to figure out what it was, and I did. But there's a lot that's right in it. First off, the whole idea of them chasing the number one dime. I loved that. The number one dime was a major part of Scrooge's backstory. It was the first money he had ever earned as a businessman. It was the foundation of his fortune. And it was his good luck charm. Whenever Scrooge lost the number one dime or it was stolen, he would lose his fortune. He would become penniless. And then as soon as he got it back, he would make his fortune again and be a multi-cajillionaire. Come on, it's a comic book. But, it was whether that was magical or it was psychosomatic, it was a very important part of Scrooge's life. And to have them chase, and it was also a very important thing for other characters like Magica De Spell and the Beagle Boys. They wanted to get it because of what it symbolized. So to have everybody chasing after the number one dime, brilliant concept. Also, the characters are jumping in and out of panels in a comic book. And some of the artwork that I've seen in some of the little shorts that they've released looks like a comic book. You've got kind of halftone shading in there, and the backgrounds aren't, the colors don't exactly match up. They're a little bit out of registration. Again, brilliant, just like in the comic books. I saw that little detail and I was like, wow, that's a great touch. The performance of the song, I had no problem with that. I thought it was a good performance. But then I started narrowing it down to the music, and I realized what was wrong. Okay, when I was in high school, I was in band. I played saxophone. I played tenor saxophone. And we had a show group, and we added a horn line to the pre-recorded music that the show group played, and I was in that horn section. A horn section just brings the energy up on any piece of music. And if you listen to the original DuckTales theme, there's a horn line. There's no horn line in this new version. That's what's missing. Listen to this. This is a little clip from the original series, and you'll see what I'm talking about. First, here's the new version. Now, here is that same section from the original theme.
Might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales, woo!
what I mean? The horn section just umps the energy. And that's what you want for DuckTales. You really want it. Now, it's a fine title sequence. I think it's a great title sequence, and I really like it. I just wish they'd put horns in it. But I wouldn't be a nerd if I didn't find something to complain about. So, I'm excited about DuckTales. I really am. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I probably will binge it. That's what I do with everything these days. But I think they've made a lot of smart choices with it. And just one minor nitpicky thing keeps it from being perfect. 10 out of 10 for inspiration, but minus several million for execution, as Zaphod Beeblebrox would say. Oh well. Until next time, when I find something else to complain about, stay nerdy.